What is going on? I want to say Panthers Nation, but you know what? This is a very special episode as we branch into the world of college football, which y'all know, hey, over the last 2 or 3 months, we've done a lot of talking around college football. We can even take off this here for a second and take a second to admire that little emblem. Oh, yeah, right up there. Let's let it zoom in on that. Look at that. Look at it go. Oh my gosh. Folks, I was not prepared for this. I, as a fan of the Carolina Panthers, as a fan of North Carolina, there is no way that I could have seen this coming. Absolutely no way at all. I am just as shocked as everyone else. When this whole thing initially started and they said Bill Belichick, University of North Carolina football, I said he's just putting his name out there. Like this is a ploy for him to draw interest, to open up something at the NFL level. Dallas Cowboys, Jets, whoever is going to be open, he's going to use this as a crutch to kind of put himself out there or whatever else comes open. But it's hard to imagine that we would see Bill Belichick on, and I hated the guy. Like, let's be real, as a Panthers fan, knowing what they did to the Panthers and just knowing in general, like everyone despised them the way that they despised the Kansas City Chiefs. To think you have one of the greatest coaches in NFL history on your sideline now. Just let that set in. Now, it's not going to be all sunshine and rainbows. Let's be real. The Carolina football team has a long ways to go, and it's reported that this is a 3-year contract, $30 million. That was the latest number I saw. I have not followed up because I've been recording a bunch of content, getting caught up. And first of all, I should say, folks, the Eagles Panthers recap is out and available. I know I posted on YouTube that I was not going to do a live stream. We had a crazy weekend. We went up about 3.5 hours away to Greensboro, North Carolina. Congratulations to my brother who went through basic law enforcement training, graduated, was like top in his class, most athletic. I don't even know the awards. He got a bunch of awards. He kicked butt, and I mean, kudos to him because he's like my age and decided to go from working on a golf course, which he's done since we got out of high school, to this crazy career change. But anyways, we went up on Sunday, watched the Panthers game. We'll get into more Belichick talk here, but I know it's primarily Panthers talk too. So we go up Sunday, we watch the game. I brought my stuff. I forgot the piece to plug into the mic, so I couldn't record. Monday, we had the ceremony, which was like at 7 o'clock at night. And so we left there a little after 8 and didn't get home until 12. I drank a bunch of coffee, so I didn't sleep. So then yesterday, I went back and rewatched the Panthers-Eagles game, was completely exhausted. I went through it again just to like refresh. Didn't get to record. I went to bed early. Finally, today I got to post a video. So that is out there and available. I've also recorded a few additional videos. Congratulations to Appalachian State Mountaineers on their hire. Excited for what Loggins is going to do. I heard him on WFNZ this morning. Really good stuff. And for Shula out at South Carolina, Panthers fans may remember Shula very closely during our Super Bowl run. Yeah, so they got their OC. But yeah, we're here today to digest the Bill Belichick news. And I think we got to look at it both ways. One, I think it's fun to be excited because why not? This is unprecedented. Who would have imagined that Bill Belichick would make the decision to come back and coach college, and not just coach college at a powerhouse program, but coach at the University of North Carolina? There have been a lot of reports, the 400-page document that he provided with how he wants to run this, talking about the organizational side, the recruiting side, reports now from VSIN Live that Mike Lombardi is going to be the quote unquote GM. And I mean, they are treating this like a full scale NFL team. We heard Bill Belichick talk on the Pat McAfee show. We've heard a lot of people talking about this, how he wants to build this into an NFL type program to help guys get into the NFL. And that's great. But we've kind of had that. And I was on ESPN Wilmington this week with my main man, Randy Slack. And he knows, I think he knows partially that I'm a North Carolina fan. So before we started talking Panthers, we started talking about the rumors of Bill Belichick and my thoughts. And if I would be content with Bill Belichick talking through developing guys versus winning ACC championships. And for me, I was like, well, we've seen guys get developed. We've seen the Drake Mays, the Sam Howells. We've seen some of the running backs, skill players, Josh Downs, wide receivers. We've seen guys get into the NFL. So like that part's been there. We've recruited well. I want to see us win. I want to see the North Carolina football team get over the hump. So here it is. I don't know how this is going to work because we know Bill Belichick has never coached at the college level. We have absolutely no idea what this is going to look like with this guy on the sideline. But I can tell you, there's a lot of talk. There's a lot of eyeballs. There's going to be a lot of money. We're already hearing talks about the NIL going from about $4 million up to $20 million. This is one of the things that I've really had to get into more as I dive into college football is understanding the NIL collectives versus revenue sharing, which is coming in 2025. Revenue sharing is going to be money that the schools earn that they can share with the players. So that's going to be, hey, we're earning this money off of ticket sales, off of media contracts. We're going to share that money with you. So you're going to have that pool of money, which I think last I looked was capped around $20 million. I'm going to learn a lot more about it the same way that I understand the NFL side. But you got about $20 million there. You have the NIL collective, which is, hey, John Doe lawyer, John Doe business wants to contribute $1 million, $500,000 to a collective to pay players. The funny thing about NIL that gets probably misunderstood is a lot of people see NIL to be frank, like NIL is really just a bunch of your school alumni paying money, putting it into a collective to pay players to play. Because the real true name, image, and likeness, it's probably a handful of players in the entire nation that are truly capitalizing on name, image, and likeness, getting money through large media brands, clothing lines, fast food restaurants. Like we don't really see it at the scale that we think players are capitalizing off of. So really you're setting aside the money to pay the players, but you're hearing now that North Carolina is going to be investing heavily in NIL, which I'm sure basketball is probably throwing up their hands saying, what about us? We can't even get a center in here. I think the whole dynamic, I mean, it's going to change the landscape of football, and especially at football at the University of North Carolina. And a lot of people look at this as the signaling the change of college athletics and how we view college athletics. Like a lot of folks are leaving from college to go to the NFL, but as this turns into more of a professional league in college football, we're probably going to see more of this happening. It is mind-blowing. I mean, when you think about some of I know there was a lot of names in the interview cycle. I think Adam Schefter, I'll bookmark this. So I'll pull it up to make sure that I don't lose it. Oh, I'm pretty sure I did. Maybe I didn't. Maybe I just retweeted it. So let me go to my profile and I'll tell you in a second. Adam Schefter put out a note on who one of the finalists was. Here we go. So had talks between Bill Belichick and North Carolina broken down. Browns passing game specialist and tight ends coach Tommy Rees, R-E-E-S, was considered to be the favorite to land the Tar Heels head coaching job per sources. So Rees interviewed for the head coaching job twice and had Nick Saban as an advocate. So there you go. Now, I don't know, man. It feels like this is the biggest pipe dream. I want to say in sports history. I don't know. I don't know how to quantify this. Like the only thing or the only way I know how to quantify this or put it into perspective is to think about Deion Sanders and what Deion Sanders did and how he worked his way up. And then he went to Colorado. And what we've seen, that's like the closest thing that I can pinpoint. And it's not directly the same. It's not like the same ratio. When I think about Deion Sanders did well recruiting. He also, again, brought Travis Hunter and Shador Sanders over. So he had big time players. Now, I'm not here to argue about what you think about the players. You can have your own opinion on how they're going to pan out in the NFL. But he brought top level talent with him over to Colorado. You look at the state of the North Carolina football program right now, it is bad. It is. So going back to I just clicked off of it, so you have to give me a second. Going back to the 2025 recruiting class, which is the class that's happening right now. North Carolina. So before Mac Brown was fired, before all this happened, North Carolina was sitting around 72. You got to remember there's about 130-ish programs. That's terrible. You go back and look over Mac Brown's previous years, he was producing some really good classes. Now, was he developing? That's TBD. But you go back and look in 2019, 32nd overall class, including Sam Howell leading the charge there. Flipped him from FSU, if you remember. 2020, they had the number 16 overall class. And I know a lot of these guys kind of bounced around and left, but he was producing top level classes. Number 14 class in 21 with Drake May leading the helm. Then you go out to 22, number 11 overall class. So the talent was there, but then we started to see a dip. 2023 was 28th. Your 2024 class was 32nd. And then this year, like I said, he was hovering, or they were hovering in the 70s. When Mac left, it is now the 90th overall class. Now, that's expected that when your head coach leaves, or when a head coach leaves, like players are going to decommit, players are not going to commit. There were still a handful of guys that committed. But overall, so yeah, you had Javion Butts, a safety, a 3-star commit, a defensive lineman, interior O-line. You had like 6 or 7 guys commit, and a few others that are still waiting. The biggest name on the list is Bryce Baker out of East Forsyth. He's a 4-star recruit, and I think there was reports saying he's anxious to hear from Bill Belichick. The funny thing is how this has impacted, what I've seen. Now, I don't follow all the recruits. Like, I'm not going to get into that level of my fandom when it comes to college sports. But I have seen some guys who are now much more proudly toting their offer from the University of North Carolina. Now, we know they were offered through a previous staff. I mean, the staff is still here, so to speak, but under Mac Brown. But guys starting to post up, hey, I got my offer. We're also seeing it's not going to be a big change, but we did see, with the transfer portal opening, so you won't have the decommits, guys that didn't commit. Transfer portal opened, and I'm not going to read through the full list, but quite a few guys entered into the portal. Today, one of the starting offensive linemen, Austin Blaski, entered and then withdrew. So I don't know if we're going to see that much of a shift. But the big question for Bill Belichick as he comes into this situation, we're going to talk about the negative impacts of all this in just a minute, because there's a lot to dissect there. So don't worry. Bill Belichick has his hands full because, like I said, Deion Sanders, looking at Deion and what he had, he brought the talent with him. I know he kicked a lot of the Colorado guys out when he got there and said, you're not going to play here or whatever. I know they recorded all that. But it's a little bit different for Bill Belichick. And so the question is, like, do kids value Bill Belichick as a coach? Like, do they look at him the same way or is kind of some of the nostalgia of who he is worn off? I don't know. I have no idea the way he's going to be perceived in the college ranks. And if he's going to have an extra chip, and now we're going to have guys flooding in through the portal. I think that's what North Carolina hopes. That's probably, as far as like the University of North Carolina is hoping, that we get tons of guys, wanting to come in. This is like a 3-year plan. And we know about his son, who's at Washington right now, probably going to come over here with him. I mean, why not, with all the changes that are there? But his son in waiting, at least what we've heard, to potentially become the head coach of the team. So you're talking about a 3-year cycle to run off of Bill Belichick's name. And let's be honest, as much as he is one of the best coaches of all time in all of football, one of the best in the NFL, we know a lot of his success is tied to Tom Brady and the marriage that they had together. Like, it's part of when you had the best quarterback of all time and you're a head coach of that quarterback, that's where a lot of your success lies. And we saw Bill Belichick without Tom Brady. We saw the decline of the New England Patriots. There's a reason that Bill Belichick is not in the NFL. Now, that's not to say he's not smart. That's not to say he can't coach, but it's going to be different. And so you've got this 3-year window, but it's a 3-year window where you're behind. And to get into really the bigger issue here, in my opinion, with this hire, is you just kicked Mac Brown out of the door. Mac Brown is 73 years old, and you kicked him out. We can argue about why, but the negative recruiting that was happening was Mac's going to retire. He's getting up in age. He's the oldest coach now, and Bill Belichick going to be the oldest coach at the FBS level. Now, I think it's going to be much harder for an NC State or Duke or Wake Forest or anyone to try to negatively recruit against that, but it's still a possibility. Like, if you're a kid going into this, you can say, hey, Bill Belichick's only going to be there for 3 years. You sure you want to sign up for that? Kids probably might still want to go for it. But I think this whole thing was North Carolina choosing to go all in. I heard someone talk about it. It might have been Adam Gold's show. I think I listen to a lot of talk shows, listen to a lot of radio. Talking about this being like Vegas, this is an all-in moment for North Carolina. Because you're either going to hit the jackpot, or you are going to bust, and your bust may set this thing back like to the point of, it's not going to be this way, but to the point where you're never going to have a football program again. It's not going to be that bad, but considering where they are now and where Mac has left it, you get maybe 3 years out of Bill that results in winning football. How quickly, like how much of a difference is Bill Belichick as a head coach going to make over anyone else in the position? His knowledge of the game, there's no doubt the knowledge is there, but this isn't the NFL. When you look at the NFL game has everyone that is relatively close to the same talent level. Sure, first, second, third string, there's some difference there. But in theory, when you think about the NFL game, and I know there's a lot of really good players at skill positions and different, but in general, you think about NFL teams, you think about everyone relatively being equal, and you should be able to plug and play. I know it's not exactly the same, but there's a difference in the college game. You're not talking about 31 other teams. You're talking about 130 plus teams and talent level. Like when you get to the NFL, everyone's NFL talent. When you are in college, you have guys that may be playing football in a year, may not. Some are, the odds of the guys that you have on your team making it into the NFL are slim. So how is Bill Belichick going to be able to make up for a deficiency in talent? Is his coaching that good that he could win, that he can install whatever program he's going to install here and win football games with mediocre talent? I mean, I think he will have the opportunity to kind of, strike while the iron's hot, like we said, hit on the portal, bring some guys in, and then start heavily recruiting into the next year or two and really painting a picture of getting guys into the NFL competing for an ACC championship. And that's it. That's the upside, and maybe this works. And then you have his son underneath behind him, who eventually takes over the program and leaves it in a good standing. And it's kind of there's a continuity there. But we got to be honest, like, if this doesn't work, it's going to be bad. It is going to be terrible if Bill Belichick loses, because you will look at how much money is being invested into the program now. Look at the resources that they are spending, the staff, all the things that they are putting into place. And if this thing busts, you could see them kind of, like I said, pulling back and maybe choosing, you know what, we are a basketball school and we're going to remain a basketball school. We're not getting into all this mess. We're going to give $5 million to football, go out there, have fun, put out a good team, and that's it. It is a wild time. You also think about some of the available, like me personally, I know Steve Wilks, because I'm a Panthers fan. Steve Wilks' name came up. Steve Wilks interviewed for the job. I would have loved Steve Wilks here. Like, Steve Wilks, younger. I love what he does on the defensive side of the ball. I think it would have been perfect sense. You know, I don't know Steve Wilks' age. I'm guessing like 40s, early 50s, but a younger coach. And that's probably the biggest downside to this whole thing is North Carolina had a chance to go younger, which was part of the reason they were going to do this, to get a guy who could be here for 10, 15 years. I mean, maybe that's a stretch, but at least 7, 8, 9 years, something that you can kind of build upon, give a little bit of runway. And now it almost feels like this is it. It's like, you got to win now. And I don't know, there's just going to be it's going to be a different lens and microscope for the University of North Carolina now, because all eyes are going to be on them. You look at the number of articles and stories and videos and posts that have been circulating around Bill Belichick. I mean, it's true. Like, North Carolina's probably going to have I think I was listening to Kyle Bailey. They said North Carolina's probably going to have their spring game on ESPN, not on ESPN Plus, not on the ACC network, like prime time, ESPN, ABC, taking full advantage. And that's what this journey is going to be. It is going to be a wild, wild ride. I don't think I could have ever predicted this. Now, we do have a statement from Bill Belichick. I think it's very short, which I'll pull up here. So, first of all, it's official. Carolina football, X, Twitter posted this saying excited is an understatement. You got to remember, Bill's dad coached here in the 50s, which, I mean, that was like a big nugget. But this is from Bill Belichick, a statement. He said, I am excited for the opportunity at UNC Chapel Hill. I grew up, that's going to make some people mad. Not me, I don't care. But I grew up around college football with my dad and always treasured those times. I have always wanted to coach in college, and now I look forward to building the football program in Chapel Hill. This is wow. There's also a video of Bill in Kenan Stadium, I guess, like when his dad was coaching, like way, way long time ago. And it's officially Chapel Bill. That's the official title now. Here's my thing. I want to see, and I'm a North Carolina fan. I'm an ACC fan. So I think you guys know I talk about NC State. I pull for them, not from like a fan perspective, but I'm a North Carolina fan, but also acknowledge the entire ACC, SMU, all those guys. Duke. Speaking of Duke football bringing in the number 1 transfer in the portal after losing Malik Murphy. Good for them. Speaking of the triad and giving kudos, I just want to see North Carolina be able to take care of business, man. Take care of business against Duke and freaking beat NC State football. Because let's be honest, NC State football has owned North Carolina. They have owned it. I will pull up another tidbit, and we are going to get into more stuff, I promise. But I I tweeted out the records for the active coaches in North Carolina at the FBS level. You have Bill Belichick with 0. Dave Doran is the leader in the state, not just NC State, the entire state, 110 wins. Manny Diaz at Duke sits at 30. Dave Clawson, not far behind Dave Doran, at Wake Forest has 99. Dow Loggins at App State with 0. Blake Harrell at ECU, the interim, now full-time head coach, 4. And Tim Albin, 33, coming from Ohio to Charlotte. So with Bill Belichick being hired, all the FBS programs in the state of North Carolina have filled their positions. And I feel like all the programs did a pretty good job. Like I said, I actually posted another video I created for the Dow Loggins hire at Appalachian State. I think it's fantastic. I listened to him on WFNZ this morning. Like I said, really good interview. It's fun, man. It's fun. And, when you bring back or you bring in Bill Belichick now and you have what's happening in the state, I'd like to see a little more North Carolina App State, a little more North Carolina ECU. This is going to be fun, folks. North Carolina travels to UNC Charlotte next year. Jerry Richardson Stadium seats with like 14,000 people. That's going to be a fun matchup. That game, I don't even know. I'm guessing tickets are going to be sold out. It's no telling. It's going to be fun. Let's go in and take a look. So you start off. Here's the 2025 schedule. The conference games. So the conference games are not set in stone just yet. But TCU kicking off at Kingdom Memorial Stadium. So home game against TCU. Then you travel to Charlotte 49ers. These games are set in stone. Richmond Spiders, FCS, and then travel to UCF. And they're bringing back Frost, competitive football, man. So that'll be exciting. We know NC State's going to be the last game, but you have, for ACC play, you have 8 games. You have travel to Cal, play at NC State. Clemson, that's another big game. Like, North Carolina has not been able to knock off Clemson. So you have Clemson, Duke, Stanford, Virginia, at Syracuse, and at Wake. To be honest, it's a pretty good schedule for the University of North Carolina. You look at Cal, you look at Stanford, they should win those games. Andrew Luck is back at Stanford, by the way, as we talk about ACC. I know NC State's always going to be hard. Clemson's difficult. But I look at Duke. Duke's better. Virginia and playing at Syracuse is always hard. But not a terrible schedule as you talk about a team like with Bill Belichick here. Now you got to be trying to get into the playoff at some point. Like, that's got to be the goal. It is wild times, man. I'm going to catch up in the comments because I have not looked at the comments. So I apologize to y'all who are tuning in. If there have been any comments, who knows? We are on Facebook, X, Twitter, and YouTube. I will say, if you're on YouTube, or if you're not on YouTube, I should say, please hit that subscribe button. Go over to YouTube, hit subscribe, get those numbers up. It is much appreciated. All right, folks. We're going to, actually, before I get too crazy, let's do this in just a second. I'm catching up now. 72 years old. Oh, my God. So true. It's true. Best coach in the NFL cannot get a job in the NFL. Oh, Bubba, man. Bubba Cunningham. What a decision. Bills need a good quarterback and good players. Bill needs a good quarterback and good players. Marco said, what's up? In a minute. Hey, it has been a minute. Talking a little college football. 5 games next year. They did win 6, but yeah, I agree. Win total, I'm waiting to see what the odds are going to be there. All of his success, yep. is with Brady. Kids being recruited were 10 the last time he won a Super Bowl, right? And he's running around with his whatever. I don't even know how old his girlfriend or whatever she is. It's wild. Yeah. I think the worst case scenario, if this thing blows up, man, it is going to be bad, like we talked about. Thank you. Yes, this is the other. It's the other statement. I tweeted out this a few times. The school can say they want to invest in football all they want. I don't know if they're banking on Bill Belichick filling up the stadium, but that's still a problem. And I don't know if Bill's going to fix it, if Bill's going to enforce all these folks. I'm not saying he's literally going to enforce it, but North Carolina fans don't show up. And you see when things go bad, how they're not there. You've seen even in years where they've been successful. I know they've had some games where they're sellouts and the stadium's pretty good size, but when things aren't going good, they turn fast. They turn to basketball. How much of a priority and how is the school going to enforce this? I don't know. Because that is, in my opinion, I look at, we can talk a lot about recruiting. We can talk about money. I think another big pitch, personally, for the SEC and even some of the Big Ten schools is the environment in which the kids get to play. Because it is night and day. And I think it does make a difference for a high school kid or recruit or a transfer portal kid to look at the environments that are in the SEC and some of the Big Ten schools and compare that to what you see at Kenan Stadium on Saturday afternoons. It's not the same. Or, hey, yeah, you get to go premiere and play on the CW network at 12 o'clock. Meanwhile, in the SEC, we have you on, what are they, on ABC at 3:30 prime time, get the music rolling. So I fully agree with that for sure. Hey, yeah. This is my father-in-law too, y'all. He's a great guy. Said make sure to tell y'all he is Go Cox. Yep, South Carolina fan. Big time. Matthew's pumped. Matthew Grodzik. Hey, what's up, man? And we new channel member. I agree. So I did tweet this out too, that this feels like a step in the direction as we talk about conference realignment. I think we need to see some fans in the stands. Get some fans up in the stands to cheer on the team. And I think that will definitely make a difference. Yeah, and shout out new member. Like I said, hey, I appreciate y'all folks. If you are watching somewhere else, you can subscribe on YouTube. It's free, helps me grow. Panthers and UNC. That's right, man. Panthers, UNC, my primaries. I love talk ACC, talk little SEC too, which as we pivot, we're going to talk about the college football playoff. However, I think this ties into the college football playoff. And actually, let me clear this out. Speaking of the college football playoff, there's a lot of discussion around the playoff field, the playoff teams, how we got here. So number one, I'll say the funniest thing to me, and I've been calling this out ever since the rankings started. And as soon as Boise State popped up, and Boise State was on the line to get the bye or a bye, one of the four byes, I said the Power Four conferences are going to get pissed off. They're going to want to shut this down. And now we are getting those reports as they look and potentially talk about expansion to 14 teams and 26, I think is when it would be open again. Talk about expansion. They're also talking about just the format itself. And to be honest, I do agree, that the current format is not the greatest. And I'm not talking about who's in and who's out. To look at the seeding and the way this thing played, I'm not a fan of looking at the rankings and ranking whoever at 11 or 12. And I know that's not the full rankings. We'll look at the rankings in just a minute. But looking at how it pans out, where you have a lower ranked team getting an automatic bye because they won their conference, and especially in the group of five, over teams that are technically better than them. Like when you look at the final rankings, and I think it just skews everything. So I do think in the future, I think there's got to be a push to reevaluate the seeding. And I think they just need to, the top four teams, if we keep it in this format, top four teams get the bye. Doesn't matter which conference, which bye, because I do think like you're talking about a harder path than for some of these other teams. And we'll look at the bracket, but you look at a team like a Penn State or whoever, path's a little bit easier than maybe in Oregon or Texas. Again, we'll look at it. But as we talk about the SEC schedule, Greg Sankey of the SEC put out a statement. It fired up a lot of people. And initially, and I was part of that, I think people analyzed his statement around the recommendation. It was really him coming out and saying that he felt that the SEC should reevaluate, that all SEC schools should reevaluate their out-of-conference schedule. And a lot of people took that as him talking specifically about Alabama, because Alabama was the first team out. And then people flipped it and said, well, Alabama lost conference games, so your statement is stupid. That's really what the premise was for a lot of people. I mean, everything I saw online was geared towards that. But as we let the dust settle on this thing, I agree with this statement. And I kind of talked about this, and I don't know how many people watched it, but you really are, when you talk about the evaluation of the teams with expansion and everything that's happening, what is the true benefit of going out and scheduling tough out-of-conference opponents when you potentially could get another loss versus scheduling cupcakes and then, knowing that there's the chance to lose a few games within your conference? And so I think it's actually a valid statement. 1 second here. So if you go back, and I think one good example, I mean, we probably could pull up probably SMU and look at their schedule, but you look at Indiana, pulling up their 2024 schedule. So Indiana played FIU, Western Illinois, UCLA, and Charlotte. So I know UCLA is ACC, but let's be real, UCLA, Big Ten, all this freaking expansion. But let's be real, like, not a good football team. And so I think part of wanting to question that decision, I think it's a valid point. I really do agree that until we can kind of get this level playing field, and I don't know that you're ever going to get a level playing field, but until you can get down into focusing on what could potentially just be the FBS programs competing for a title, or Big Ten, SEC, if they want to come together, you never know, do their own league, then we're going to see this. Because why would you go out and schedule a game against a top 5 opponent when someone else in the country has scheduled 4 cupcakes? And I understand the way schedules work. These are years in advance. You don't really know how this is going to play out. But I do think it's a valid point. So the 2025 SEC schedule has been released. We'll get this pulled up here in a second and talk through it. I hope so. Going back on UNC, maybe we'll see a few fans there. Also like West Virginia. Yeah, Rich Rodriguez back at the helm. That was wild to see them kind of getting back on good standings after all the craziness there. So we are going to talk college football playoff in a second, but I also wanted to take a look. So the 2025 SEC schedule is out. We already know the opponents, but the official dates are set. SEC got way ahead of this. So for the actual conference games for the SEC, all the conference games are the same as this year, but flipped. So whoever you had home is now away. Whoever you had away is now home. But I mean, even looking at this, Alabama and Florida State, I know Florida State is down. had been, Florida State been a good team, do you reconsider rescheduling that? But Florida State, Louisiana Monroe, they also have Wisconsin. So Alabama, and people want to rag on them, is choosing to play 2 Power 4 teams outside of their out of conference schedule in Florida State and Wisconsin. Then they have Louisiana Monroe and Eastern Illinois, Arkansas, Alabama A&M, Arkansas State, Memphis. They're actually traveling to Memphis, and Notre Dame. Auburn has Baylor, Ball State, South Alabama, and Mercer. Florida has LIU, USF, Miami. So this is another thing too when you talk about the tough out of conference. So Florida has Miami as well as Florida State. And I know Florida State, like you said, has been down. I think they'll get better. Miami showed that they're better. But that's another serious conversation that you have to think about in the state of football. Do we really want teams canceling their rivalry games, a Clemson and a South Carolina, in favor of getting better positioning? I'm not saying either school is going to do it, but that is, you look back, Texas A&M, and I know that was different circumstances, but do we really want that to happen? I think that's part of why there's a lot of discussion around this. Georgia has Marshall, Austin P, Charlotte, and Georgia Tech and Atlanta. Kentucky has Toledo, Eastern Michigan, Tennessee State, and Louisville, LSU and Clemson. At the Battle of Death Valleys. Louisiana Tech, Southeastern Louisiana, and Western Kentucky. Ole Miss has Georgia State, Tulane. That's a pretty good out-of-conference game. Washington State as well, and the Citadel. I'm going to skip through some of these because to be honest, I don't care. I want to get into this. Here's another for South Carolina. One, as a fan of Beamer, speaking of Frank Beamer, ACC, Virginia Tech, I am pumped for this game just for the legacy. I know he's not there, but Shane Beamer getting to go against his dad's former school. I wish it was like a home and away at Virginia Tech and then at South Carolina, but we'll take a neutral site for a kickoff. That's going to be fun. So in Atlanta, South Carolina State, Vanderbilt at Missouri, Kentucky, Vanderbilt at LSU, Oklahoma, Alabama at home, at Ole Miss, at Texas A&M. That's a tough stretch. Man, they really stacked Bama, Ole Miss, and A&M in a row. That is tough sledding. Very tough. And then Coastal Carolina and Clemson. Oh, we have another Atlanta matchup with Syracuse and Tennessee. So, anyways, all right, it's time to get into the college football playoff because I have started this. I should say the college football playoff rankings came out Sunday. While I was driving, I was listening to ESPN radio. They did the official announcement of the release. So I got to hear that live, but let's take a look at, I'm going to try to get the bracket pulled up here. Possibly. Technology is fun. Here we go. NCAA.com. All right. Let me share this. And we'll close out today's episode. Again, if you are here and you're a Panthers fan, there is a Eagles recap available directly on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast. So fun times. All right, we've got your playoff bracket here. So a lot of confusion initially for me and maybe for you if you didn't understand this. I thought ACC, SEC, I thought the Power Four conferences were guaranteed a bye, but it was the Power Four conferences plus the group of five that was actually part of being able to get the bye. So You have Oregon, number 1 overall seed, undefeated. Georgia as the number 2 seed and the number 2 team in the country, winning the SEC. Boise State, winning the Mountain West, is ranked 9th in the country, but the 3 seed. So this is part of the issue I have. And then Arizona State, who is ranked 12th in the 4th seed. So those are your 4 seeds. Clemson is actually ranked. They're the lowest ranked team in the field at 16, and they actually get the 12 seed. But starting, left, working our way down, you have Tennessee and Ohio State. Fairly match up there, but I mean, that is a very tough draw for Oregon, in my opinion. Going to go up against Tennessee or Ohio State, like a rematch with Ohio State, is going to be tough. It is a home game. That's going to be a big matchup for them. Arizona State gets the winner of Clemson and Texas. I think the biggest question in this game, like this is not an official preview, but the biggest question for me is it Quinn Ewers or Arch Manning? Because Quinn hasn't really impressed us. Arch Manning sitting in the waiting. Is he going to be available? We'll see. So the winner of that will take on Arizona State. And then you have the battle in Indiana. I will say for the first round and into the second round, I like the matchups. So you're looking at new matchups. With all of these, the only rematch that you would see in this round in the second round, which are the bowl games, the first bowl game would be Ohio State and Oregon. Everything else is going to be new. So I'm all for that. But you have Notre Dame, Indiana, like we said, SMU and Penn State. And this is just wild. Boise State gets to host. So it feels like Penn State is the number 4 team in the country, but they're 6th seed. They got to really, got to feel like their odds are pretty good to beat SMU, to then travel to Boise State. Way too early. Penn State seems like a early favorite to make it to the semifinals, is what I would think. Georgia also, I mean, I feel like if Indiana was able to pull an upset, I'd be a little bit worried there. But I think Notre Dame, Georgia is a good matchup, but Notre Dame can, at least recently, can't win big games. But we know that it's really going to be about the health of Beck. Good news is they have the bye, so they got some time to rest. And then, Arizona State went lights out in the Big 12, has been playing hot the rest of the year. I mean, I feel like the early favorite has to be Oregon. If I was to pick like a bucket of teams, like a group of 3 that I think the champion's going to come out of, I think it has to be Oregon, Ohio State, or Tennessee. That's just my initial thought. And because I think any one of those 3 could potentially win. I know Tennessee's kind of had some ups and downs, but I think anyone out of that 3. I think the bottom bracket with Arizona State, Clemson, Texas, that's probably the weakest. I'm just not sold on Texas being a good football team. Now, Arch Manning could change that. Maybe, Penn State's kind of carrying the load. I'm an ACC guy, but I still think SMU is weaker. I'd be surprised if they could pull this off. We'll see. But I do think that bottom is going to be carried by Penn State. And then I still think Georgia, unless Notre Dame finds something, is going to be the favorite up there. But that's going to do it, folks. It's been great talking to y'all on some college football content. Again, Panthers content is available. We'll be back with more stuff from my side. And until next time, it's Carolina's Dad. Y'all have a good one.